Because we create the currency, we don't have to worry about running out of money. We can afford to buy whatever is available. This involves spending on roads and bridges, the military, hospitals and schools. Finding the votes to pass a spending bill can be hard, but finding the money is never a problem because we're the greatest nation on earth and we just create it. That's complete nonsense, by the way. Global debt is now almost $300 trillion with a T. 300 trillion. So I'm going to come on to all this in a little while, but you cannot, I was listening to this debate this week, very interesting. It was between Peter Schiff and Professor Wolf and Professor Stevens, someone I've not heard of him before. And it was really bizarre. I don't know if it was like these guys were just clashing heads because they're all like big cheeses, but it was a really bizarre conversation and debate to listen to. Peter Schiff was actually quite rational and logical and saying that you can't just print debt into infinity, it will create hyperinflation, it will create a crash. Whereas these other guys were like, no, you know, we create the money, we create it, and they keep calling it money, it's not money. We create it so we can print it into infinity. We'll always have people to buy the debt. We'll never have hyperinflation. It was a really bizarre debate, and it just showed me now the MMT crowd have completely lost it. Modern monetary theory, that stands for, by the way. And I think if you spend too much time in your own doctrine, around people, your own peers, you know, patting each other on the back, etc., I think eventually you just lose track completely of reality. And even though you've got history books, there's thousands of them out there that tell you the path leads to one place, people just sort of discount that. It's a bizarre phenomenon. I don't really know how to describe it. Almost $20 trillion was printed created just in the last 18 months alone. Global debt to GDP is now over 350%. Just stop and think about that for a second. Production's going down. We've got no energy. Coincidence, very, very strange. All of a sudden, all the energy is just disappearing. We had loads of energy in 2019. 2020, not a lot was used compared to 2019, but all of a sudden, it's disappeared. Oh, it's vanished into thin air. There's no oil or electricity or gas, and oh, it's just vanished. Yeah, of course it is. I was born yesterday, yeah. So this is what we're dealing with right now. And here's a staggering figure. So 35 to 40 countries may have no way out of their current debt crisis. Think about this, which isn't spoken about and is very taboo for me to say. Who lent them the money? Think about that. It was a lot of organizations, but one of them was the IMF, the World Bank, these globalist institutions. They're the one lending the money. Do you honestly think they just lent them this money, developing nations that is, out of the goodness of their own heart? Do you honestly think they didn't get collateral, you know, something in return for these debts? Of course, these are the best, smartest bankers on the planet. Of course they got collateral. So what's going to happen when these countries default? That is the big question. That is the big worry, I think. And I was looking at the September 21 stats for consumer debt in the United States. Now sits at $15 trillion. Personally, if I were in your position, I would start looking at maybe getting rid of some of this debt, because it could become somewhat of a liability as we go forward. So if that's something you've been thinking about, you've got some spare cash in savings, it could be a good option for you just to pay down a little bit of your debt. You don't want to be over leveraged if we do go into a deleveraging period. So the average American debt among consumers is about $90,000, and that's non-property based debt, so home, which is bizarre to me. You know, credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, student loans, and that doesn't include, you know, your HELOCs or your mortgages and things like that. Worrying to see the level of debt now in the United States. And for those of you who are in America, I know it probably seems normal to have that sort of level of debt, but it's actually not. This is a new concept and invention. It's been created through capitalism and through banks, and there's a lot of good documentaries on loans and credit cards, and you know, the JP Morgans and the Morgan Stanleys of the world, and you know, Chase and all these others that created this concept to increase profitability. Just remember the age-old adage, you know, the debtor is slave to the lender. Never forget that, because it's true. And one of the things I realized when I finally got out of debt was that it took off this huge weight off my mind, which I didn't even know it existed. It's as if you carry it around with you on your back, this level of discomfort and uncertainty and worry that you don't even know is there, because you just learn to live with it. But that is what debt is. You do become slave to the lender. So definitely think about that more. You go to a lot of countries, you go to European countries, there's nowhere near this level of debt. People get their credit card bill at the end of it, they pay it off. They're not carrying balances. They do get loans, but they pay them off quickly. It's a very different world. So, and I worry about Americans for the day of reckoning when this all comes to start collapsing, and the way it's going to collapse. There's a lot of different theories I have on it, but one of them may be something major in the sort of corporate world, because it's usually corporate that starts it, you know, like Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns type thing. It's usually a big collapse like that. So we have Evergrande in China right now, which is on the way down. It's not looking good. And remember that Chinese real estate is the largest asset class in the world in terms of assets. Just bear that in mind. Don't take your eye off the ball like a lot of people have done with that. So here's what you need to know about the debt ceiling. You don't need to really worry about it. They bring it up however often it comes up. You know, they've just extended it to December, and then they'll extend it 2 years and all this. You don't really need to worry about it. If it ever happened, it would be a complete collapse of the whole global economy. I mean a complete collapse. If they ever just said we're not going to raise it and that's that, it would destroy everything, because confidence in US treasuries, which is the most secure in the world basically, would just dip. The credit ratings agencies would just downgrade it. People would want to dump some of their treasuries. People wouldn't be buying treasuries in other countries like China, Japan, the UK hold a lot of them. This would lead to rising interest rates. Rising interest rates would lead to asset values collapsing. You would see collapse in everything. Banks collapsing. Banks, you know, the countries that are connected would start collapsing as well. Everything would just completely collapse. You know, they've done this 78 times. This will be 79 times over the last 50 years alone. They always do it, because if they didn't do it, it would just be too severe. So don't even worry about it. I see a lot of YouTubers as well. A couple of them my friends, so I'm not going to bash on them too hard, but they make a big deal. Oh, complete collapse of the global economy in, 5 days time. No, it's not. Just chill out. That's not going to happen. One of the issues we've got right now, though, is this, the Democrats are trying to pass a $1.5 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill and a $3.5 trillion Democrat-only infrastructure bill to address climate change and the economy. So should you be worried about this debt and the debt ceiling and all of this? Well, I say yes, but the politicians say no, because you won't have to pay it. It'll be future generations. What? Have they not got children? Do they think people don't care about their children and grandchildren? These guys are crazy. Let me read the statement out from, I won't say. Because we create the currency, we don't have to worry about running out of money. We can afford to buy whatever is available. This involves spending on roads and bridges, the military, hospitals and schools. Finding the votes to pass a spending bill can be hard, but finding the money is never a problem, because we're the greatest nation on earth and we just create it. That's complete nonsense, by the way. Part of it is true, but part of it is nonsense. You can't just print as much money. You can't just go out and print $1,000 trillion tomorrow, or even $100 trillion and expect there to be no impact financially or globally. Obviously there will. Like, this is some of the madness of the MMT crowd, who are influencing even the top level leaders. In one way or another, we will have to pay the debt eventually. Either that, or there will be a global economic collapse. It might not be next year or the year after. It might not even be until years down the line, but eventually it will have to happen. It is inevitable. So that is your two. There's other choices as well, but they're your main two choices. Either you default and you have a global collapse of all the debt, because the dollar is the global reserve currency, everything would collapse. It would be an absolute disaster. Or you just keep raising the debt ceiling until eventually you reach that point where interest rates simply cannot sustain the level of debt, because the rate, even if you had it at 0.1%, and that was the rate for forever, eventually you're going to create so much debt there that you're not going to be able to pay the interest on it. So that is the nitty-gritty of it. I don't understand why these professors try and come up with all these complex theories around it. It's simple. You either pay the debt or you default. That's it.